Something is coming, not in the sky, not in the news, in you. You felt it lately, the quiet discomfort, the sudden pull towards solitude, the strange timing of things falling apart and falling into place all at once. You're not wrong. There is a shift, subtle, silent, and sacred. And if you're tuned in, you've already noticed the signs. In the Shaolin path, we're trained to feel the change before it arrives. Like monks sensing the rain in the bones before the first cloud appears. The energy around the 8/8 portal is no myth. It's a known phenomenon rooted in ancient solar alignments. The Lion's Gate isn't just astrology, it's a spiritual checkpoint, a gateway. And for those on the path of awakening, it doesn't wait. In this video, I will walk you through 8 uncommon, sometimes uncomfortable signs that you are being prepared for transformation. These are not theories, they are lived experiences. Patterns I've seen again and again in those entering deeper states of self-mastery. You may not recognize them as blessings, but that's the thing about transformation. It often arrives disguised as disruption. There is a reason you're watching this now. Timing is sacred. If these signs speak to your soul, it means something is being activated in your field. And once it begins, you can't go back. You can only go deeper. Stay with me until the end, because one of these signs will confirm what you've silently suspected for weeks now. And when it does, don't run from it. Return to your training. Return to presence. Welcome to Shaolin Soulfire. Subscribe if you're ready to walk the ancient path with modern awareness. Your discipline is the doorway. Let's begin. There comes a moment on the path when the very things you chased begin to lose their taste. The applause, the likes, the approval of others, they once felt like nourishment, but now they feel like noise, hollow, thin, insincere. And it confuses you at first, because nothing outside has changed, but something inside has, quietly, deeply. I've seen this many times. A student trains for years, striving to become better, stronger, more disciplined. They push, they perform, they seek validation. Then one day they arrive at the temple before dawn, sit in silence and break down, not out of failure, but because they no longer know why they're trying so hard. That is not weakness. That is a sacred unraveling. You are not falling apart. You are being unwrapped. In Shaolin discipline, we don't gather to impress. We strip away. The titles, the image, the approval of the world, all of it must burn in the fire of truth, because the self cannot emerge until the mask is gone, and the ego will not surrender until it has exhausted every performance. This is the phase where people may misunderstand you. You may even misunderstand yourself. The joy you used to find in recognition now feels empty, not because life is dull, but because your soul is waking up. And the soul doesn't care about applause. It craves alignment. When you begin to feel this shift, do not panic. Let go with grace. What's falling away was never truly yours. It was just a costume stitched from fear and need. The way doesn't ask you to become someone. It asks you to return to who you were before the world told you who to be. The shedding is sacred. Let it happen. There's a silence that speaks louder than words. And once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. You sit with someone, and they begin to talk. The usual surface-level chatter, complaints, comparisons, gossip about someone not in the room, and your body tenses. Not out of judgment, but from a quiet knowing this is no longer food for your spirit. In the earlier stages, you tolerated it, maybe even joined in. But now, every word feels heavy, misaligned, as if your inner world no longer has room for such noise. This isn't rudeness, it's clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from internal discipline. When you've trained your mind to be still, the restless energy of empty talk becomes unbearable. Ancient teachings speak of right speech, words that carry intention, weight, and alignment. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are clean. In the temple, monks sometimes spend entire days in silence, not as punishment but as practice, because silence reveals, it sharpens, it strips away the unnecessary until only the essence remains. And when the essence speaks, it rarely needs to explain itself. As the 8/8 portal draws near, your frequency begins to shift. You sense energy beneath language. You feel when words are manipulative, when laughter is hollow, when presence is missing. And in that awareness, small talk becomes exhausting. Not because you're better, but because your soul is simply done pretending. You begin to crave communion over conversation, depth over entertainment, stillness over stimulation. Not everyone will follow you there, and that's fine. Some truths are felt, not spoken. Some connections happen without a word. When your inner world becomes this precise, this tuned, you'll find that truth starts to arrive quietly, like a breeze entering a still room. It doesn't ask for attention, it just changes everything. There's a point in the journey when the war within you begins to fade, not because you've won, but because you've stopped fighting. The habits that once pulled you, scrolling, overeating, reacting, escaping, they start to loosen their grip. Not by force, not through struggle, just quietly, naturally, like a rope slipping from your hands once you stop tugging. You notice you don't reach for the same distractions. The same arguments no longer tempt you. You respond where you used to react. And the strange part? You didn't plan this. You didn't make a strict schedule or a long list of goals. It's just happening. This is what the Shaolin path calls effortless correction. Not because discipline disappears, but because your energy has shifted. The same way a stream changes course when the stones are moved, your behavior changes when your internal structure realigns. In the early stages, there is effort. There is tension. You correct, adjust, breathe through discomfort. But beyond a certain point, the system begins to self-correct, and it feels less like you're fixing yourself, and more like something true is simply revealing itself underneath. This is not the peak moment. It sets a return. Shaolin mastery isn't built on fighting the ego. It's built on watching it until it grows tired. You train not to force change, but to create space. And in that space, transformation occurs on its own. People may ask how you did it. You won't have a clear answer, because the real work happened in silence, in stillness, in staying present one moment longer than the craving. You're not trying to be better anymore, you're just becoming more real. And when that happens, effort becomes a memory, alignment takes its place. There's something about those early hours when the world is asleep, and the air feels thinner. You wake, not from fear, not from noise, but as if something called you, and for a moment you just lie there, aware, still, listening to a silence that feels alive. This is not random. In ancient circles, they called it the hour of the gate. Between 3 and 4 a.m., the body is quiet, the mind is soft, and the soul has more room to speak. It's when veils thin, when truths you're not ready for in daylight slip into your awareness through symbols, sensations, or deep, soundless presence. Sometimes there are dreams full of strange animals, numbers, places you've never seen but somehow recognize. Sometimes there are no dreams at all, just a heavy, sacred stillness. No thoughts, no visuals, only space. This too is a sign. The ego sleeps, but the spirit watches. Shaolin monks train to wake during these hours, not for routine, but for alignment. To meditate in darkness is to listen without distraction. The silence before sunrise holds a purity that daylight cannot. And when the soul is ready to ascend, it stirs here first. If you've been waking during this hour, don't rush to explain it away. Don't scroll, don't numb it. Sit, breathe, even just for a minute. You're being invited into something rare, an initiation without ceremony, a lesson without words. The ego may ask, what does it mean? But the soul doesn't need to answer. It only needs you to be present. In that still hour, something ancient is whispering, not to your mind, but to your memory. Not the memory of this life, but of the self beneath all stories. Listen, not with your ears, but with your being. There are days when the tears come without warning, no trigger, no story. Just a sudden wave, grief, gratitude, or both rising up from a place you can't name. This is not weakness. It sits release. The body remembers what the mind forgets. And when the soul begins preparing for elevation, it clears space. not through thinking but through feeling. Deep, unexplainable feeling. Shaolin teachings say that sorrow lives in the lungs, not just from loss in this life, but from lifetimes of holding, suppressing, enduring. Through disciplined breathwork, monks learn to move that energy, slowly, patiently, without needing to label it. You may feel it during meditation, or while sitting alone, or even in the middle of something ordinary, washing dishes, walking home. A wave comes, you cry, then suddenly peace. This is energy dislodging. It's how the soul empties the cup so it can be filled with something higher. And sometimes, instead of sadness, it's joy. A quiet, swelling gratitude that stops you in your tracks. You notice the way sunlight hits the floor. You feel the pulse of life in your hands. And for no reason at all, you thank something greater without knowing who or what. This too is a sign that the veil is lifting, that the old weight is leaving. Not because you forced it out, but because it's time. Before a portal opens, the soul lightens its load. You can't take all that baggage into the next level, not if you want to move freely. Let the emotion come. Don't analyze it. Don't resist it. Sit with it like an old friend who finally feels safe enough to speak. Because healing doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes as water. And when the water flows, the soul breathes. There's a silence you begin to seek. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of disturbance. You find yourself turning down invitations. Not out of bitterness, not because you're broken, but because something within you is calling for space. Space to listen, space to breathe without interruption. It confuses others. They think you're withdrawing, but you know better. This isn't loneliness, it's alignment. In the Shaolin tradition, solitude is a sacred phase, not a punishment, but a preparation. Before a monk is given deeper teachings, he is sent into silence, not to escape the world, but to hear beyond it. Because true transformation isn't loud, it arrives like a whisper. And if your life is too full of people, of noise, of constant input, you'll miss it. You begin to notice how certain rooms feel heavy, how certain conversations feel like static. You're not judging, you're just becoming clear. And clarity naturally creates distance. This is the training ground. Solitude is not the goal, but it is the furnace. In that emptiness, everything false begins to fall away. Your compulsions, your personas, even your need to be needed. You sit in the quiet, and at first it feels like nothing. But slowly, the silence sharpens, patterns rise, truths surface. And in that stillness, the real work begins. You're not hiding from the world. You're preparing to return to it with a steadier soul. Honor the pull. When your spirit asks for silence, give it. Not forever, just for now. Because emptiness is not a void, it's a vessel. And something is being poured into you that only the quiet can hold. Time starts to slip. You look at the clock and wonder where the day went. You can't remember what you ate for breakfast or whether something happened yesterday or last week. It all begins to blur. Not because you're lost, but because something deeper is taking over. You're either fully immersed in what you're doing or floating somewhere beyond the edges of your routine. This isn't set confusion, it sets expansion. Shaolin awareness teaches that time bends in presence. When your mind is still, when your attention is whole, the usual structure of time loosens. A single moment stretches. A single breath feels eternal. And what we call lost time is often just time spent in pure alignment. Beyond effort, beyond planning, beyond control. In the temple, we don't count time by hours. We measure it by clarity. A minute of true focus is worth more than an hour of distraction. And when the soul prepares for transformation, it starts to pull away from the mechanical rhythm of the world. Not in rebellion, but in return. The deeper rhythm, the cosmic one, is not driven by calendars or clocks. It moves in spirals, in waves, in silence. And when you begin to sync with it, time as you knew it no longer fits. You may forget what day it is. You may find yourself standing still, watching the sky change, unable to explain why it moved you so deeply. This is not dysfunction. It's a sign of re-entry into the present moment, where all true power lives. Before portals open, time loses grip. Because what you're stepping into can't be measured. It can only be felt. Let the blur come. Let the structure soften. You're not falling behind. You're finally moving with the rhythm that never rushes. You walk into a room and feel it before you see anything. A subtle tightness in your chest. A dull pressure behind the eyes. You can't explain it, but you know something is off. Too much noise. Too many fragmented energies. Too little presence. You used to brush it off, push through, distract yourself. But now, even 5 minutes in the wrong environment leaves you drained. This isn't set weakness. It sets refinement. Shaolin teachings speak of Qi, the life force that flows through all things. When that flow is blocked, the body suffers. But when it opens, when it clears, something else happens. The senses sharpen. You begin to feel what others overlook. Not emotionally, but energetically. The more you train in stillness, the more you notice what disturbs it. That's the paradox. As you become more grounded, you become more sensitive. Not to be overwhelmed, but to navigate more wisely. You don't react to everything, but you register it. And that awareness guides your movements, your choices, your interactions. In the temple, this sensitivity is seen as a sign of maturity. When a student complains that the noise is unbearable, the teacher smiles, not with pity, but with recognition. Because to feel is to wake up. To discern is to protect the path. You're not broken because you can't tolerate chaos. You're simply no longer numb to it. The crowds, the heavy rooms, the forced conversations, they pull on your field because your field is clearing. You're learning to listen with more than your ears. You're sensing truth in the space between words. Trust that. Trust the pull to leave, to breathe, to return to center. Sensitivity is not a flaw. It sips the body sips way of saying we sipped, aligned now. Let sips keep it that way. The world around you feels loud. People are rushing, breaking down, chasing control. Maybe even in your own life plans fall apart. Conversations don't land. Things feel uncertain. But strangely, in the middle of all this, you feel calm. Not numb, not checked out. Calm. There's a quiet inside you that wasn't there before. Like a deep well untouched by the surface storm, and you don't know how or when it arrived, but now it's just there, steady, rooted, still. This is the rarest kind of strength. In Shaolin practice, we're taught that real power isn't about controlling the outer world. It's about mastering the inner one. Anyone can stay centered in silence, but can you stay centered when life is shaking the walls around you? That's the test. That's the path. There's a phrase used in temple life: the still heart moves the storm. It means the one who remains undisturbed has more influence than the one who panics to fix what's broken. When your calm no longer depends on perfect conditions, you've stepped into true mastery. You'll notice people start to lean into your presence, not because you're loud, but because you're anchored. You don't need to solve everything. You just hold your center, and that alone shifts the space. This kind of peace can't be faked. It comes from facing your own fear, your own noise, your own ego, and learning not to feed it. What remains after that is pure awareness. Everything else is a costume. This silence, this stillness, that's who you've been beneath it all. So even when the world spins, you no longer lose yourself in it, because you've remembered the truth. Real strength doesn't shake. It watches, it waits, it acts only when necessary. And in that space, everything aligns. So much of this path is about remembering what's already true. These signs you're feeling, they're not random and they're not mistakes. They're the way your soul speaks when words fall short. Subtle shifts, quiet pulls, a sense that something deeper is unfolding, even if your mind can't yet explain it. That's the invitation of this portal, not to chase a new identity, but to release the one that no longer fits, to make space, to meet each moment without needing to control it. The more you listen, the more you'll notice life begins to arrange itself around your inner stillness. So if the days blur, or your emotions swell, or silence feels more comforting than ever, let it be. Practice your awareness like a monk sweeping the floor, simple, present, without urgency. That's where real transformation happens, not in big leaps, but in small conscious choices repeated with devotion. Let this be one of them. If you found truth in today's message, stay close to this space. Like this video, subscribe to our channel Shaolin Soulfire, and walk this path with us, step by step, breath by breath. You don't need to force the next chapter. Just stay awake long enough to welcome it.